300 years ago, the will of heaven appeared. Countless secret kingdoms and dungeons descended to Earth. Along with them came numerous powerful demons who proclaimed the apocalypse for humanity. After the initial chaos, the awakened emerged. The Job Changers possessed a powerful power that helped them defeat those monsters and save the world from its near destruction. To fight against the monsters, the Job Changers continued to explore the secret kingdoms in order to obtain wealth and materials. Nations began working hard to cultivate these Job Changers, allowing everyone to awaken at the age of 18. The day came to awaken a class for students turning 18. To awaken a class, one had to touch a magical blue crystal. Several students touched the crystal. One student named Wang Wei from the 3rd year of Class 2 failed to awaken a class and was labeled as a student without a class. Another student named Lai Wei from Class 3 of the year successfully awakened the swordsman class. Another student named Wang Hao from Class 3 of the 2nd year successfully awakened the crafter class. The awakenings were usually divided into 3 categories, according to their class: combat, support, and creation. The combat category was the most practical and everyone wanted to obtain it, while on the other hand, no one wanted to obtain the creation category, since in this category were those who couldn't fight and were considered the weakest and despised by everyone. Several more students touched the crystal and a student with purple hair became happy as he awakened the combat category called Magic Swordsman. On the other hand, another student became sad and started crying because he had awakened the creation category. He began to wonder why he had managed to awaken this class that was not good for combat. After the awakening ceremony was completed, the class range was also divided, usually into 4 categories: common, secret, and divine. Among them, a divine rank was the rarest. This rank could only be seen once every 100 years. It was our protagonist's turn, Jang Chen, to touch the crystal and awaken a class. He touched the crystal and it began emitting a powerful light. Upon seeing this, the other students were astonished. A brown-haired boy pointed his finger at Jang Chen and told everyone that he was the prodigy of the academy. Another student informed the others that this was a sign of an awakening. While Jang Chen was touching the crystal, it began to emit a powerful light that started advancing rapidly towards the sky. The students began to wonder what rank this class was. Several thought it could be a divine class, as Jiang City hadn't produced a divine talent in hundreds of years. In a matter of seconds, the crystal started emitting a powerful light that formed a giant tree in the sky, visible from every corner of the city. It was said that every time a divine rank class awakens, a phenomenon occurs that can shake the heavens and the earth. Several seconds later, the awakening of the class was successful, and while Jang Chen was touching the crystal with one hand, he put his other hand in his pants pocket and simply stared at the sky. At that moment, Director Wang appeared. He approached Jang Chen and congratulated him for being the pride of the school. Although he knew that Jang Chen could awaken a combat class, he did not expect him to awaken a divine class. After saying this, Director Wang asked Jang Chen which class he had awakened. Jang Chen turned his head slightly towards the director and was somewhat surprised. With a smile, he explained to Director Wang that the class he had awakened was not a combat class. Upon hearing this, Director Wang was shocked. With a surprised look on his face, he started looking at Jang Chen. Seeing that Jang hadn't awakened a combat class, he asked him if he had then awakened a support class. Jang Chen turned his body towards Director Wang, extended his hands to the sides, and plants made of spirits appeared in the palms of his hands. He revealed to everyone that he had awakened the creation class of divine rank called Spiritual Master. He also added that this talent was meant to assist with the growth of plantations and small creatures. Upon hearing this, both the director and others were shocked. With a surprised look, he began to stare at Jang Chen and explained that this was bad because the creation class did not have combat abilities, so even divine rank was considered useless. The professor accompanying Director Wang asked Jang Chen not to be discouraged since even if he couldn't fight, at least he could be safe. He explained that spiritual masters were quite popular in the field of research. He also added that the recommendation he had promised was no longer possible. He advised Jang Chen to enter the research field as a professor could get him a letter of recommendation. Just before the professor could finish speaking, Jang Chen interrupted him. He turned his head towards him and thanked him with a smile. He put his hands in his jacket pockets and while walking away from the professors, he explained that he had something to do. One of the students started laughing and told his classmate that this was a farce, as he had thought Jang Chen had obtained some kind of divine combat class, but it turned out to be just a creation class. The other student put his hand near his face and told his friend that life was full of surprises. He also added that everyone thought Jang the prodigy of the academy, would awaken a combat class, and now no matter how much he excelled academically, he would be considered useless. Jang Chen put his hands in his pants pockets and began heading towards the exit, while the students nearby started mocking him. One of the students told the others that this was quite enjoyable to watch, as Jang Chen had been the king of hard work since he entered the academy. Another student told the others that he had worked so hard only to end up getting a creation class. Another student told the others that Lin, the school beauty who always came in second place, had awakened a secret combat class. Upon hearing so many jokes, Jang Chen simply smiled and thought that just a moment ago, those two students had been very cruel to him. He hadn't expected that awakening up with a creation class would change things so drastically. Thinking about this, he had no doubt that in this world only strength mattered. He began to wonder what was wrong with the creation class, so he reached out his hand and a system window appeared above the palm of his hand. According to the system notification, Jang Chen had successfully completed his class awakening. He had awakened the class called Divine Rank Spiritual Master, and the conditions for opening the Natural Calamity insect system had also been fulfilled, with the initial Mother of Insects being unlocked. Jang Chen turned his head to the side, and as he stared at the system window, he couldn't help but smile, thinking that this class was a perfect fit for him. The name of our protagonist was Jang Chen. After dying, he was reborn in this awakened world. After the Dark Era ended, the whole world became filled with various monsters and dungeons. It was from that day that this world began to respect the strong. He had been reborn as an orphan to survive in this harsh world. Despite having nothing in this world, he gave it his all before turning 18. He thought he was going to have to rely on his own skills to make a living. To his surprise, a month ago, on an ordinary day, a system window appeared in front of him to inform him that the Insect Calamity system would be merged after class awakening, and the system would activate after a successful transfer. Jang Chen put his hand on his chin, and while looking at the system window, he thought that the insect race, which had once devastated humanity during the Dark Era, was an extremely powerful race. He had heard that the last time a natural calamity occurred, 9 out of the 12 kings of the human race were sacrificed to seal it. He clenched his fist tightly and thought that in this world, strength was everything. There was nothing to doubt. He began to stare fixedly at the system window, and while his body emitted a powerful energy, he thought that as long as he could use the strength of the insect race for himself, the insect race would have no chance against him. Without thinking any further, Jang Chen activated the system, and by doing so, he was teleported inside the system. He started looking around and became somewhat confused. He began to look ahead. He put his hand near his head to cover his eyes and thought that this was his own sea of consciousness. In front of him there was a great spiritual tree. Upon seeing this, Jang Chen began to wonder if this was his talent. He had not expected it to be a tree. More system windows appeared. Jang Chen had several class talents. These talents were evolutions of all things, and sacrifice was required. They could be used once every 10 days and were limited to 1 use per target. The first talent was called Fruits of All Things. Through sacrifice, Jang Chen could advance the growth progress of fruits, and a special fruit could randomly fall. The second talent was called Improved Growth. This ability allowed him to increase the growth rate of living beings. Currently, this ability increased the growth rate by 10%. By using this ability, Jang could accelerate the growth of all living beings, and the duration of cooldown was 8 hours. Jang Chen put his hand on his chin, and while he was looking at the system window, he thought that this system was good since it had even proactively analyzed his talent. Although these talents seemed to lack combat ability, each one could be applied to his system. While he was distracted, a system window appeared asking him if he would like to start summoning the mother insect. Without hesitation, Jang Chen asked the system to summon the mother insect. At that moment, an evil energy began to emerge from the ground, and a system notification window appeared to inform him that the mother insect was being summoned. As Jang stared at the energy, he thought that the mother insect had a strong presence. Several seconds later, another system window appeared to inform him that the summoning of the natural calamity rank mother insect called 9 Wings of Miasma had been successfully completed. The mother of the insects was a gigantic creature. She began to stare at Jang Chen, who took several steps back and was amazed. The status window of the mother of the insects appeared. She was called 9 Miasma Wing. From the abyss she was known as the Sovereign of Death. Once as a calamity, she caused a catastrophe as great as a natural disaster and then disappeared during the Third Era. The current devouring value of her was 0%. Jang had a 100% affinity with the insect mother. Jang had to proceed with the devouring and start breeding the next generation of insects to unlock abilities. The insect mother approached Jang, who was amazed and began wondering why she was so enormous. The insect mother began to stare at Jang and addressed him as a master. She introduced herself as Little Nine and explained that she was very hungry and wanted to devour fierce beasts. Another system window appeared to inform him that the growth rate of the insect mother had increased by 10%. Now, Jang could use a sacrificial object to enhance this target. The first enhancement would not consume any sacrificial objects thanks to his talent. Jang slightly raised his head, and while looking at the system window, he thought that now that he didn't need to use a sacrificial object, there was no time to waste. Without hesitation, he asked the system to upgrade the insect mother. The body of the insect mother began to envelop itself in a powerful green light, and while Jang was observing this, he thought that she needed to devour in order to level up, so she wasn't going to be easy to please. The body of the insect mother started emitting a powerful aura, and quickly Jang assumed an offensive stance. Little by little, the insect mother began to evolve and take on the form of a human woman. Several seconds later, the insect mother successfully evolved. Her body began to emit a powerful aura. She had white hair and wore armor. With a murderous look, she started staring at Jang. Slowly, she began to advance towards Jang, and a system window appeared above her head. The Queen of the New Plague had undergone a vital transition and leveled up. Along with leveling up, she gained new abilities. The first ability was called Nurture. With this ability, she could share the experience 10 times with the host. The second ability was called Poisonous Mist. With this ability, she could transform into deadly miasma, corroding everything. The third and final ability was called Communion. This ability allowed her to enhance all of the host's abilities by 20%. Upon seeing the form of the insect mother, Jang was surprised. The mother insect gained momentum and pounced on Jang to give him a hug. She explained to him that Little Nine had evolved. Jang was somewhat confused as he didn't know what was happening. He turned his head slightly towards her and couldn't help but blush upon seeing that the insect mother had evolved into a human form. She stopped hugging Jang, and he started stroking her head. She closed her eyes, clenched both fists, and referred to Jian as a master. With a smile, she explained that Little Nine wanted to devour flesh and blood. While Jang was stroking her head, a status window appeared above her head. Her name was Nine Miasma Wing, and she had 4 abilities: Poison Mist, Feed, Fury, and United. Currently, her devouring value was 0. Once the devouring value bar was filled up, she could start spawning offspring. She had 2 passive abilities called Experience Return and Attribute Enhancement. While Jang was stroking Little Nine's head, he started looking at her stat window and thought that the spiritual master talent could accelerate the devouring growth of the insect mother, as well as her experience growth, which in turn would speed up his own improvement. Furthermore, the insect mother was capable of increasing all his attributes by 20%. Jiang's class and this system were a perfect combination. With this, he didn't need a combat class. He extended his hands to the sides, and a bunch of insects started coming out of the palm of his hands. He turned his head towards the insects and was amazed. As long as he killed and devoured quickly, he could soon have an army of insects. Jiang turned his head towards the great spiritual tree and thought about what the system message had just mentioned. Insects, abyss, a catastrophe as big as a natural calamity. Combined with this incomplete information, it was clear that this was not something that could easily be shown to others. Being discovered could lead him to his demise. He put his hands in his pockets, and while he was looking at the spiritual tree, for now he decided to use his class identity as creation, and the poisonous miasma abilities of the insect mother as cover to devour monsters and increase his strength. Hiding was not Jiang's style. He wanted to become strong enough to show off his skills to the world. While he was lost in thought, the sea of consciousness water began to move. Seeing this, the insect mother quickly jumped up and started flying. As they both looked at the water, Jiang explained to her that this could only mean one thing. At that moment, with a murderous look, the insect mother turned her head back and caught Jiang's attention. While she was looking back, she started to smile and explained to Jiang that she felt there was a threat. At that moment, Jiang exited the system space, and upon seeing what was in front of him, he was shocked. In front of him there was a man much taller than him. This man had black hair, a beard, and had a scar on his eye. The man approached Jang and started staring into his eyes, remaining silent for several seconds. The man asked Jang if the awakening phenomenon that the whole city had seen before had been activated by him. While Jang was staring at the man, he clenched his teeth tightly and realized that he was at least a master rank or higher. He became alert and started wondering why he was being sought after. While the man was staring intently at Jang, his body began to emit a powerful green aura. The people around approached, and even though the man was quite far away, they could feel his strong aura. They started wondering what level of awakened he was. Seeing that he was talking to Jang Chen, they began to wonder if there was some kind of conflict. The man began to stare into Jang's eyes, and upon seeing this, he became somewhat nervous as it was quite strange. This man had been pressuring Jang for a while now without even saying a word, and he didn't know if the man was testing him. At that moment, the insect mother appeared. While she was licking her finger, she approached Jang and with a murderous look in her eyes towards the man, she told Jang that this man was a threat to him. To her, the man seemed delicious and she wanted to devour him. Jang panicked and knew something was wrong. His suspicions were not incorrect as several warning windows from the system appeared. The insect mother had detected a threat to Jang. The system considered that the man would provide a high value for devouring, and the insect mother was about to start devouring him. Jang's body began to emit a powerful aura, which started spreading in all directions. He quickly realized something was wrong because now Little Nine had detected a threat, and she was going to start attacking. Jang's powerful aura reached the students who were previously mocking him. They began covering their faces with their arms and wondering why Jang had such a cold and sinister aura. Jang became furious. With a murderous look, he began to stare into the man's eyes. He realized that when the devouring value was low, the aggressiveness of the insect mother increased. To prevent this from happening, he needed to find some monsters for Little Nine to devour as soon as possible. Seeing the powerful aura emanating from Jang, the man simply started smiling. And upon seeing the man's smile, Jang quickly realized that he wanted to test his strength, but unintentionally activated the insect mother. The good thing was that Jang was still able to suppress the insect mother. Without hesitation, Jang suppressed the insect mother and a system window appeared. He had temporarily suppressed the insect mother and her devouring value was low, so that this would not happen again. Jang had to start with the devouring and breeding of the insect mother as soon as possible. While the man had his hands in his jacket pockets, he began to stare at Jang and couldn't help but congratulate him. Although Jang had just finished his awakening, he was already able to face the man's tests, and even counterattack. The man told Jang that he was worthy of a divine awakening, and he also added that his future was limitless. Jang simply stayed silent, listening. He felt relieved as he hadn't been discovered. He approached the man and while staring into his eyes, asked him who he was. The man began to smile, then extended his hand and introduced himself as Jai Gang, the leader of the Night Watch. He admired Jang's strength and asked if he wanted to join them. Upon hearing this, Jang was surprised as he did not expect Jai Gang to be part of the Night Watch. The Night Watch was an organization specially tasked by Grand Zia with resisting demons and hordes of beasts. Whenever there was a wave of beasts or a new secret realm or dungeon was generated, the Night Watch would always be the first to investigate or eliminate them directly. Due to the constant fight on the front lines, the mortality rate of the Night's Watch was extraordinarily high, and most people avoided it, but for Jang it was different. The insect mother needed to continuously devour the flesh and blood of monsters to accumulate devouring value and produce offspring. Currently, Jang needed an opportunity to confront large monsters, and once the devouring value was complete, the insect mother would start reproducing, and no one knew how much commotion she would cause. For this reason, the wild nature was a good place for breeding the insect mother. As long as Jang joined the Night Watch, whether by devouring or reproducing, the risks they presented could be easily dealt with. While Jang was looking at Jai Gang's hand, he couldn't help but smile since the Night Watch organization was perfect for him. The students started saying that the Night Watch had a high mortality rate. Most people didn't even go there, so the students thought that Jang Chen wouldn't join the Night Watch. Upon hearing this, Jai Gang forced a smile at Jang and told him that all the rumors about the Night Watch were a thing of the past. In order to prevent Jang from rejecting the offer, Jai Gang told him that as long as he was willing to join them, he would receive comprehensive training. Due to his divine rank, his resources were very valuable to the Night Watch. Without thinking twice, Jang shook hands with Jai Gang and called him leader, telling him that there was no need for further explanation. Jang began to stare into Jai Gang's eyes and told him that in order to restore the glory of the Night Watch, Their generation should not shy away from their duty. After saying this, he explained to Jai Gang that he was willing to join the Night Watch. Upon hearing this, Jai Gang became somewhat confused. What he didn't know was that Jang planned on relying on them for the insect breeding. Jai Gang was shocked and asked Jang if this was true. Just before Jang could answer his question, the mother insect appeared and started sending system notification windows to Jang. She was very furious. She explained to Jang that she was not happy with this because she wanted to eat the man. After saying this, she started telling him that she was very hungry. Upon hearing this, he became nervous, closed his eyes and told Jai Gang that what he was saying was true. After saying this, he left with the excuse of having an important task to do. He began to distance himself from Jai Gang, slightly turned his head towards him, waved goodbye and told him that in 3 days he would be punctually present at the Night Watch headquarters. Jai Gang simply turned his head towards him and remained silent. He may have thought that this was going to be more complicated. He hadn't expected it to be so simple. He had forgotten to ask Jang what hidden profession he had. At that moment, 2 men fell from the sky and landed near Jai Gang. One of them was the 8th elder of the Martial Arts Academy. Jai Gang turned his head towards them and told the elder that if he was here to snatch people from the Night Watch, then he had arrived too late. The elder asked Jai Gang where the guy who awakened a divine rank creation class was. Upon hearing this, Jai Gang became somewhat confused. He turned his head towards the old man and asked him what he was talking about. The old man approached him and, while looking into his eyes with a surprised expression, asked if he was planning to let a divine ranked awakened from the creation category join the Night Watch just to die. Upon hearing this, Jai Gang realized that Jang had the divine rank creation class. At the same time, Jang went to the city. A man named Uncle Wang asked him if he had been the one who caused the phenomenon in the main city. Jiang replied yes. A woman with purple hair approached Uncle Wang. She put her hand on her waist and asked him to lower his voice or he could die if someone looking for trouble came. Uncle Wang put his hand behind his head, closed his eyes, and started laughing. He told her that he was always talking non-stop. Jiang approached them, closed his eyes, and with a smile he reassured Uncle Wang not to worry because this was not something embarrassing. Uncle Wang turned his head towards Jiang and told him that even though the creation category couldn't fight, he had heard that companies always cultivated spiritual plants that needed people from the creation category. He told Jiang that if his parents were here, they would be very proud of him. Throughout the years, Jiang had been able to survive thanks to the support of everyone living in the same building as him. With a smile, he told them all that he wouldn't forget them in the future. Uncle Wang asked him not to worry about these small things. He also added that Jiang had arrived at the right time as they were about to go to a beginner-level secret realm to obtain some equipment. Uncle Wang wanted Jiang to join them and level up together. Jiang accepted the proposal and thanked Uncle Wang. At that moment, a system message appeared because he had completed the team formation. Several minutes later, Jiang and the others crossed the portal and entered the secret realm. While Jiang had his hands in the jacket pockets, he began to look around and started wondering if this really was the interior of the secret realm. At that moment, the torches of the secret realm lit up because the matching had been completed. All the monsters inside started looking towards Jiang and the others. This secret realm called Temple of the Dead was a C rank one, and it was currently open. The secret realm guaranteed a 100% drop rate for items and equipment. Experience points were going to be calculated after completing the secret realm. Voluntarily leaving halfway meant giving up on both experience and equipment. Uncle Wang became somewhat nervous as he realized that these monsters were undead soldiers. He began to wonder why the secret realm system had matched them with a dungeon of this level. Jiang started looking at the undead soldiers and realized that this secret realm was not going to be easy to deal with. The girl with purple hair approached them and explained to Uncle Wang that because Jiang was a divine ranked awakened, the celestial system had assigned them a higher level secret realm. Uncle Wang slightly turned his head towards her and reminded her that Jang Chen had awakened in the creation category. The girl with brown hair also approached Uncle Wang, and while looking at the undead soldiers, she asked him why they didn't abandon this secret realm. Just before she could finish speaking, Uncle Wang interrupted her. He began unsheathing his sword and told everyone that there was no problem, as they didn't come across secret realms of this level every day. He also added that this time, thanks to having Jiang with them, they would be lucky and get some great equipment drops. Seeing Uncle Wang unsheath his sword enraged the undead soldiers. Uncle Wang gathered momentum and while advancing towards the monsters, he asked Jiang to step back a bit since these undead soldiers were more dangerous than average C-rank monsters. Uncle Wang asked Jiang to stay behind while they advanced towards the core of the dungeon first. Uncle Wang attacked one of the undead soldiers with his sword, delivering a strong blow to its head. He He turned his head back and asked Xiao Zai to quickly improve his talent. Upon hearing this, Xiao Zai clasped her hands together and activated her power, causing Uncle Wang's talent to improve. Thanks to this enhancement, Uncle Wang ended the life of the undead soldier monster. While Uncle Wang and the others were fighting, Jiang simply stood by watching from afar. He began to wonder if they fought against monsters every day just to survive. When thinking about this, he had no doubt why they always came back covered in wounder, yet Xiao Zai had always supported him. He had heard that she became an adventurer because she was forced to heal her brother's eyes. While he was staring at Uncle Wang and the others, he thought about becoming stronger quickly, and when he earned money, properly thanking them. While he was distracted, the insect mother began to manifest herself. She put her hand under her chin, and while looking at the undead soldier's corpse, she told Jiang that there were many monsters and blood here, and she wanted to devour them. While Jiang had his hands in his pants pocket, he turned his body towards the undead soldier's corpse and started smiling. He thought that Little Nine had already detected the corpse. Given this situation, Jiang decided to first test Little Nine's abilities. He reached out his hand to the side and used the level 1 poison barrier skill called Corrosion. A fog of poison appeared in his palm, and he ordered Little Nine to devour the undead soldier's corpse. She thanked him, and the poison fog began to advance towards the corpses and slowly started to devour them. In a matter of seconds, the monster corpses began to disappear. Jiang realized that the monster corpses corroded as soon as they made contact with the poisonous fog. After seeing this, Jiang had no doubt that Little Nine's poisonous fog was very powerful. After Little Nine devoured the corpse, the devouring value rose to 10 points. The level of the monsters was too low, causing the growth rate to be slow, so Little Nine needed to devour more monsters. While Jiang had one hand in his pocket, he slightly turned his head back and thought that Uncle Wang and the other two were truly partners who had been working together for years. In such a short time, they had already advanced to the depths of the dungeon. Since the poisonous mist was an area skill and Jiang still couldn't control it accurately, there could still be accidental injuries. To avoid this, Jiang decided to follow Uncle Wang and the others from behind and take care of the monsters' corpses. At that moment, Little Nine caught his attention. She told Jiang that she felt something. Jiang turned his head to the side and saw more monsters starting to emerge from the ground. Little Nine told him that she sensed freshness and blood in that direction. These monsters were level 10 shadow lurkers. They had a strength of 20 points, agility of 15 points, defense of 10 points, and stamina of 5 points. These monsters were lurking in the shadows to hunt down the weaker stragglers. While Jiang was staring at the shadow lurker monster, he began to wonder if its name was in red because its level was much higher than his. However, in terms of attributes, these monsters were completely inferior to Jiang, who had the skill enhancement united. A statistics window of Jiang appeared. He had a devouring value of level 1. His identity was the Lord of Insects. His occupation was Divine Rank Spiritual Master, and he had 3 level 1 talents called Growth of All Things, Divine Evolution, and Ancestral Tree of All Things. Jiang possessed the insect mother named Little Nine, or better known as Nine Miasma Wing. She had a natural Calamity level. He didn't have any equipment. He had 35 points in Strength, 31 in Agility, 27 in Endurance, and 20 in Constitution. His combat power score was 41 stars. Currently, he had 2 active passive abilities called Experience Return and Attribute Enhancement. The current devouring value was 100 and the current experience was 0. Jiang decided to test his skills. He reached out to one side and gave Little Nine the command to transform into a poisonous mist and follow him. She listened to him and transformed into a poisonous mist, which began to stick to the ground. At that moment, the monsters called Shadow Lurkers started advancing rapidly towards Jiang. He brought his hand close to his face, and while his hand was releasing the poisonous mist from Little Nine, he started staring at the monsters. Several seconds later, he began running towards them. Upon seeing this, the monsters tried to attack Jiang, but he dodged their attacks and in the process touched their bodies with his hand, infecting them with the poisonous mist. The monsters began to look towards the body part where Jiang had touched them, and upon seeing poisonous mist, they became confused. While Jiang was staring at the monsters, he extended his hand towards them, then clenched his fist tightly and started smiling. At that moment, Little Nine's poisonous mist grew thicker and slowly began to corrode the bodies of the monsters, gradually destroying them. Jiang simply turned his head towards the monsters and remained silently watching. At that moment, several system windows appeared, and he gained 200 special price. While Jiang was looking at the corpses of the monsters, he thought that they were no match for him. He began to smile as he saw that the devouring value was also increasing rapidly. As he was lost in his thoughts, Little Nine appeared and informed him that more blood food had appeared. Behind them, more shadow lurker monsters began to appear. Jang simply put his hands in his pockets and remained silent without making any movement. Then he turned his head towards the monsters, and while staring at them intently, he felt worried about Uncle Wang and the others as he realized that there were actually many hidden monsters in this dungeon. He decided to quickly finish off these monsters to go check on how Uncle Wang and the others were doing. He asked Little Nine if she would be able to deal with the monsters. Little by little, she began to manifest herself through the poisonous mist. While staring at the monsters, she reached out her hand towards them and asked Jang to leave them in her hands. As for her, all these monsters were small prey. Several minutes later, Jang went to where Uncle Wang and the others were. Upon arrival, he saw that Uncle Wang was quite injured. The two of them were surrounded by monsters. Uncle Wang was holding the sword with both hands and had his back against Xiaoyi's back. She had both hands extended towards the monsters and was ready to use her ability to defend herself against the attack. Gradually, the monsters began to advance quickly towards Uncle Wang and Xiaoyi, preparing to attack. While the blood from Uncle Wang's wound was falling onto his face, he clenched his teeth tightly, and while staring at the monsters, he explained to Xiaoyi that each time the monsters were becoming harder to defeat. Therefore, if they continued at this pace, there was no way they could defeat them and come out alive. Uncle Wang turned his head towards her and ordered her to find Jang and leave here first. Upon hearing this, she turned her head towards him and asked what he was talking about. While he was distracted, an undead soldier gained momentum and started advancing quickly towards Uncle Wang with the intention of attacking him by surprise. While Uncle Wang held the sword with one hand and looked at Xiaoyi, he felt the presence of the undead soldier and began to wonder what was happening. Quickly, he turned his head towards the monster, and upon seeing that its sword was rapidly approaching his head, he clenched his teeth tightly and thought that this was not good. At that moment, Jang appeared. He reached out towards the monster and used Little Nine's poisonous mist ability. Just before the undead soldier's sword could impact Uncle Wang, the poisonous mist stuck to its body and slowly began to corrode it, destroying it in the process. While little by little the body of the undead soldier was disappearing, Uncle Wang turned around, and upon seeing this, he was surprised and confused at the same time, and began to wonder what was happening. At that moment, Jang asked Uncle Wang and the others if they were okay. Upon hearing Jang's voice, Uncle Wang turned his head back, and upon seeing Jang, he clenched his teeth tightly and remained speechless. As Jang slowly approached them, he reached out his hand to one side and used Little Nine's poisonous mist, infecting the undead soldiers and destroying them in the process. While little by little all the undead soldiers were being corroded, Uncle Wang turned his body towards Jang. While holding the sword with one hand, he stared at Jang and asked him how a creation class awakened like him was able to do this. Jang stopped in front of Uncle Wang, and while his body emitted a powerful energy, he turned his head towards him and explained with a smile that he had a hidden ability called Poisonous Mist. After saying this, he extended his hand to the side and used Little Nine's Poisonous Mist ability again. Seeing that Uncle Wang was injured, Jang asked Xiaoyi and Xiaolai to quickly take him to the portal of the secret realm. He also added that he planned to stay behind to cover them. Upon hearing this, everyone was left speechless. With a surprised look, Uncle Wang started to stare at him and told him that even though Jang possessed a divine class, this was too dangerous. Xiaoyi also began to look at Jang with a surprised expression and asked him to join them instead of staying here fighting against the undead soldiers. While they were talking, Xiaolai simply put her hand near her mouth and remained silent. Jang turned his back on them, and as his body emitted a powerful energy, he slightly turned his head towards them and reassured Uncle Wang not to worry because he wouldn't have any problems. After saying this, Jang turned his back on Uncle Wang and the others, and as his body emitted a powerful energy, he slowly began to approach the monsters. At that moment, the system notified everyone that due to the number of people in the last level of the secret realm meeting the requirements, the boss of the secret realm was being summoned. While Uncle Wang was watching Jang move away from them and advance towards the monsters, he tried to stop him, but just before he could speak, Xiaoyi interrupted him. She turned her head towards him and reminded him that Jang was not a reckless person, so she asked him to trust him. After much consideration, Uncle Wang decided to trust Jang. He threw him the sword and asked him not to forget to return it later. Upon hearing this, Jang reached out and grabbed the sword, assuring Uncle Wang not to worry as he would return it later. This sword was called the Novice Conqueror's Sword. It had 25 speed points, 30 strength points, and a 2% attack speed bonus. It also had a passive ability that was already active. Jang brought the sword close to his face and stared aggressively at the monsters. For him, this was great because now he could increase the attack range of the poisonous mist with Uncle Wang's sword. He activated the poisonous mist, causing it to slowly emerge on the blade of his sword. The undead soldiers gained momentum and attempted to attack Jang, but in the blink of an eye, he evaded their attacks and using Uncle Wang's sword, cut the monsters into pieces, infecting them with the poisonous mist in the process. These monsters were no match for Jang, as he was the best swordsman in the entire school. While Jang was distracted fighting against the undead soldiers, a much stronger monster gained momentum and began to advance towards him at high speed. The monster unsheathed its sword, and as it slowly approached Jang, it prepared to attack him by surprise. Although Jang didn't initially feel the presence of the attack, once he turned his head to the side, he saw the monster approaching him at great speed. Jang gathered momentum and made a big leap, dodging the monster's attack and causing its sword to strike the ground. The monster's attack was so strong that it even shattered the ground into pieces. Upon seeing that Jang had dodged the attack, the monster began to stare at him with a murderous look, then tightly gripped the sword and, upon seeing that he was in the air, attacked again. Luckily, Jang managed to block the attack in time using Uncle Wang's sword. However, due to the difference in strength, the sword that Uncle Wang had lent him broke in half, causing Jang to be thrown backwards. Quickly, Jang stepped on the ground and managed to stop his body in motion. Then he turned his head to the side and, upon seeing that Uncle Wang's sword had broken, he was surprised. This boss was stronger than he had imagined. Jang was more worried about the sword than the boss, as he didn't know how to explain to Uncle Wang that his sword had broken. The boss of the secret realm was called Undead King and was level 15. The Undead King stood up and, while holding the sword in one hand, started staring at Jang with a murderous look. At that moment, the body of the Undead King began to vibrate, and in the blink of an eye, it appeared behind Jang and prepared to attack. Upon realizing the presence of the Undead King, Jang became terrified and started wondering how the boss had moved at such a high speed. Jang turned his head towards the Undead King, and while looking at it with an aggressive gaze, he called for Little Nine. Just before the Undead King's sword could strike Jang, Little Nine appeared and grabbed hold of the blade. She began to stare fixedly at the Undead King and asked Jang if she could eliminate him. Without hesitation, Jang replied yes. Upon hearing this, Little Nine became happy and, using only her hand, she broke the blade of the Undead King's sword into pieces. She extended her hands to the sides and her body started emitting a powerful energy that began to move in all directions. Upon seeing this, the Undead King became alert. Now that it had lost his sword, it decided to attack using its fists. Taking advantage of Little Nine's distraction, the Undead King began to advance quickly towards her with the intention of attacking her by surprise. At that moment, Little Nine opened her eyes and her body changed drastically. With a killer look in her eyes, she started staring directly at the Undead King and used the tentacles to defend herself. She adopted an offensive stance and, using her tentacles, she began to attack the Undead King with a series of blows. Her tentacles were as sharp as swords. Little by little, her sharp tentacles started to destroy the body of the Undead King. First, she cut off its left arm and then its right arm, and finally she cut off its head. She impaled the tentacle into the head of the Undead King, then turned around, and the boss's body fell to the ground. She took the head of the Undead King in her hand, and while her body was emitting a powerful energy, she began to approach Jang. Seeing how powerful she was, Jang couldn't help but smile. He couldn't believe that Little Nine was so calm in front of a secret realm boss. He thought that now that the boss had been defeated, the portal would open. Little Nine gained momentum and landed near Jang. At that moment, an energy crystal appeared in front of him. While he stared at the crystal, he started to wonder what it was. The energy crystal began to rise in the sky and slowly started extracting magic from the corpses of the monsters. Upon seeing this, Jang was amazed. Several seconds later, the energy crystal began to glow, causing a giant monster to appear. This monster was called Undead Tyrant, and it was 20 times bigger than Little Nine and Jang. With a killer look, the Undead Tyrant began to stare at Jang and Little Nine. Seeing that the crystal had transformed into a monster, he started to wonder if the energy crystal was the true boss of this secret realm. Jang turned his head back, clenched his teeth tightly, and ordered Little Nine to destroy the energy crystal inside the Undead Tyrant. While the monster stared at Jang, it began to roar. The monster struck Little Nine with a mace, but in the blink of an eye, she gained momentum and propelled herself off the wall, dodging the attack. Upon seeing that she had dodged the attack, the Undead Tyrant prepared to attack again. It attacked Little Nine once more, but she gained momentum and made a big leap in the air, evading the attack in the process. This caused the monster's mace to hit the ground, shattering it into pieces. While Little Nine was in midair, with a murderous look on her face, she began to stare intensely at the undead tyrant and then extended her hands towards it, causing sharp tentacles to quickly advance towards it. She began to attack the boss using her sharp tentacles, but effortlessly it dodged all the attacks as if nothing. Seeing that the undead tyrant, being such a large monster, was able to move at such high speed, Jang was surprised. He clenched his teeth tightly and started thinking of a plan. Looking down at the ground, he saw several plants among the debris. Upon seeing this, he decided to take advantage and use his divine creation class called Spiritual Master. He began to stare at the plants and thought that he only had one chance. Jang realized that the undead tyrant was too fast and each of its attacks were also powerful. The undead tyrant lifted the mace from the ground and gained momentum. For Jang, it was like a raging bull that had gone out of control. But this was also a weakness. Little Nine tried to attack the undead tyrant using her sharp tentacles, but it started spinning its body at high speed and dodged them effortlessly. Gaining momentum, it began to quickly advance towards Jang. Several seconds later, it made a big leap. Jang lifted his head towards the undead tyrant, and while staring at it intently, he thought that this was not good. He had already sensed it just now. There were many hidden roots beneath the ground. While the undead tyrant was in the air, it grabbed the mace with both hands, and as it quickly advanced towards Jang, it prepared to attack. As Jang watched it slowly getting closer, he decided to use his talent at the moment when it got close enough, and this would stop it in its tracks. Several seconds later, once the undead tyrant got close enough, Jang started staring at it and decided that this was the moment. He reached out his hand towards the ground and a green symbol appeared in it. He used his talent, and gradually the spiritual roots hidden beneath the ground began to emerge. Jang turned his body towards the undead tyrant, and while giving it a deadly stare, he extended his hand towards it. In a matter of seconds, 4 spiritual roots emerged from the ground and attacked the undead tyrant, piercing through its body in the process, and trapping it in midair, rendering it unable to move. While Jang had his hand extended towards it, and his body was emitting a powerful aura, he began to look at Little Nine and told her that it was now her turn. In the blink of an eye, Little Nine reached the undead tyrant. She placed a hand on its head, and while preparing her claws with the other, she stared at it with a murderous gaze and responded to Jang with the understood master. Upon realizing that Little Nine was ready to attack, its expression changed drastically as it realized that something bad was about to happen. It tried to defend itself, but it was in vain. Just before it could make a move, Little Nine gained momentum, and using her sharp claws and tentacles, she attacked it, piercing its body in half and destroying the spiritual roots in the process. In a matter of seconds, the undead tyrant's corpse fell to the ground, while Jang had his hand extended towards the sky and was controlling the spiritual roots. He began to stare at the undead tyrant's corpse and couldn't help but feel proud. He had managed to defeat the undead tyrant. Jang's ability was secure enough, so as long as he used his skills properly, he could still play a great role in battles. While he was lost in his thoughts, a system notification appeared to inform him that the growth acceleration was on cooldown for 8 hours. Because of this, slowly but surely, the spiritual roots began to disappear. Several seconds later, the core emerged from the undead tyrant's corpse. Upon seeing this, Jang decided to break it immediately. Just before the core could fly away, Jang approached and grabbed it with his hand. He then clenched his fist tightly, shattering the core into pieces. As the fragments of the core gradually fell to the ground, Jang started staring at his fist with an aggressive look and thought that this was the end. At that moment, several system notifications appeared, congratulating Jang for clearing the C-rank secret realm called the Temple of the Undead. The system began calculating the contribution and a few seconds later, successfully generated the secret realm score. Jang Chen, who was level 0 and had the class of Spiritual Master, obtained an S rating in this secret realm. Wang Yi, who was level 12 and had the class of Swordsman, obtained a B rating. Liu Ying, who was level 11 and had the class of Warlock, obtained an A rating. And Yi Qian, who was level 10 and had the class of Boxer, obtained a B rating. The heavenly system began generating team rewards, causing a window to appear in front of Jang. Several seconds later, the system successfully generated the team rewards, making the window longer. Jang could choose from several weapons. The first one was a dagger, the second one was a scepter, the third one was a heavy axe, the fourth one was a light axe, and the fifth one was a hammer. As the spiritual roots slowly returned to the ground, Jang started staring at the system window and remained lost in thought for several seconds. He put his hand into the system window and grabbed the dagger. Once he took the dagger out of the system, its statistics appeared. This was Edmu's Swift Dagger, ranked D, granting 50 attack points to the user and a 5% speed bonus. This dagger was related to swords and granted 2 professional attributes. Jiang held the dagger with one hand while checking the blade with the other. He thought it was good and decided to use it as compensation for Uncle Wang. He turned his head to one side and while looking at the system window, he thought there was a lot of equipment. It didn't take him long to realize that all of the equipment was geared towards combat. He wasn't sure if there was anything suitable for the creation classes. He approached the system window, put his hand inside the system, and decided to take a look at the attributes of each equipment. He grabbed the hammer from the system window, and once he pulled it out, the hammer hit the ground because it was very heavy. This hammer was called Call of the King, granting 100 strength points to the user and deducting 100 agility points due to its weight. The attribute of this weapon was that the user had a 10% chance to trigger 5 times more critical damage. While Jiang was trying to lift the hammer from the ground, he began to feel a new sensation. A notification window appeared to inform him that the experience was being rewarded. Upon seeing this, he quickly realized that the system was giving him the experience points he had obtained from this secret realm. Although the hammer was very heavy, thanks to the experience, Jiang gradually became able to lift it. In a matter of seconds, he was able to lift the hammer as if it were nothing. Another notification of the system appeared to inform him that the United ability was in effect. Now all of Jiang's attributes had increased by 20%. While his body was surrounded by a powerful energy, and with one hand he was lifting the hammer, he put the other hand in his pants pocket and turned his head towards the hammer. Under the passive ability of the Insect Mother, he had reached level 6. In this way, the effect of United was also more prominent. He also realized that the physical combat ability increased along with the level. While he was lost in his thoughts, Little Nine approached him. She grabbed his shirt and got his attention. Upon hearing her voice, Jiang snapped out of his trance. She turned her head towards him and while pointing at the system window with her finger, she asked if she could eat all this as a reward. He put the hammer on the ground, turned his head towards her and while looking into her eyes, he pondered for several seconds. He turned his head towards her and told her that Little Nine couldn't eat the equipment, as it was for Uncle Wang and the others to exchange for money. He also added that if Little Nine ate it, then she would have a stomachache. Upon hearing this, she placed one hand behind her back and while touching her lips with the other, she began to look at Jiang with a sad expression. Then, she turned her body towards the undead tyrant's corpse and asked Jiang if she could devour it. He had completely forgotten about the remains of the boss. The devouring value was precious and could not be lost. While his body was surrounded by a powerful aura, he turned his head towards the corpse of the undead tyrant and gave Little Nine permission to devour it since it belonged to her. Without hesitation for a second, Little Nine approached the corpse of the undead tyrant, which was gigantic. While Jiang was looking at its corpse, he began to wonder if this boss wasn't a bit too big. Due to its large size, if Little Nine used the poisonous mist to corrode it, then it might take her some time. Little Nine extended her hands to the sides, closed her eyes, opened her mouth and told Jiang that she was digging. At that moment, her body started vibrating and in a matter of seconds she returned to her natural form. After returning to her natural form, she began to look at the corpse with a murderous gaze, opened her mouth, and started approaching it. Despite the fact that the undead tyrant's corpse was gigantic, compared to the mother insect's natural form, it was minuscule. Seeing that she had returned to her natural form to devour the corpse, Jiang was terrified. She opened her mouth and while rapidly advancing towards the boss corpse, she began roaring. She began to devour the corpse, creating a strong gust of wind in the process. Jiang took advantage of this and removed all the equipment from the system window. While holding the hammer with one hand, he started covering his face with the other. Little Nine's roar was too loud, but luckily they were in the secret realm. If this had happened in the main city, they would have been discovered no matter how well they tried to hide. Once she finished devouring the corpse, a system notification appeared and granted Jiang 400 devouring points. While Jiang was covering his face with his arm, he realized that the devouring value was increasing rapidly. He thought that, as expected, the value of the boss's meat was different. He realized that they needed to eat more boss-type monsters to increase the devouring value. While he was lost in his thoughts, someone started approaching them. Upon hearing the sounds of footsteps, he quickly turned his head back and clenched his teeth tightly as he realized that Uncle Wang and the others were coming because they had heard the noise Little Nine had made. The current devouring value was 8876 points. He approached Little Nine and asked her to quickly return to the other form. Upon hearing his order, she started smiling and replied with a understood master. For Jang, this was a pity as the devouring value was so close to being filled. Several seconds later, Uncle Wang and the others arrived. Upon seeing the equipment on the floor, he realized that Jang had indeed passed the level. Jang explained to Uncle Wang that he had broken his sword, but in exchange, he gave him the dagger. Without hesitation, Uncle Wang took the dagger, and upon seeing that it was a rare item, he told Jang that he would not pursue the matter of Jang damaging his equipment. Xiao Zai approached Jang and explained that this necklace was also a rare item which could be sold for a lot of money. Yi Qiang asked him how the hell he had defeated the boss alone. Jang put his hand behind his head and replied that his poison seemed to be more effective in suppressing monsters like this boss. After saying this, with a serious look, Jang began to look down at the ground. The secret realm had been perfectly cleared, but after a secret realm was cleared, it would not refresh again. Getting the devouring value from another boss should be enough to start breeding the swarm of insects. If Jang wanted to find a new boss, then he had no choice but to go to the desert. Uncle Wang started looking at Jang and told him that it was a shame he was going to the research department, seeing that he wasn't even level 1 yet could already defeat a boss monster. He told him that in the future, if Jang leveled up, then he would be strong. After saying this, he asked him what his plans were now. Jang turned his head towards him and with a smile explained that he hadn't told him before because he was afraid of worrying him. But actually, he was preparing to join the Night's Watch. Upon hearing this, Uncle Wang was shocked and asked if he really intended to join the Night Watch. Jang placed his hand on top of his head and answered yes. He revealed to them that he was going to go to the Night Watch in 3 days. Before going, he wanted to increase his level, so he planned on heading towards the wilderness soon to continue leveling up. Upon hearing this, Uncle Wang was shocked, and Yi Qiang put her hand over her mouth as she couldn't believe that Jang was going to do something so dangerous. Xiao Zai reached out her hand towards him, and while looking into his eyes with a serious expression, she explained that the wilderness was very dangerous. Just before she could finish speaking, Jang interrupted her. He clenched his fist tightly, causing Little Nine's poisonous mist to start emerging in the palm of his hand. He asked Xiao Zai not to worry about him, as he knew what to do. He asked them instead of worrying about him, to worry about those monsters. That same day, a few hours later, Jang boarded the train and arrived on the outskirts of the city. The conductor asked those who were going into wilderness to get off the train. Jang got off the train. He was wearing a cloak to avoid drawing attention. He started looking to one side and stood still for several seconds. In front of him there was a bridge which was full of awakeners. After awakening the system, Jang's appetite had increased. What was even more scandalous is that despite not being very stable, there was actually a slight increase in his devouring value when eating. He took out a loaf of bread, and while he was eating it, his devouring value increased by 2 points. Little Nine manifested herself, put her hand near her mouth, and while she looked at the bread with an unpleasant expression, she told Jang that his food wasn't tasty. Upon hearing this, Jang decided to find something to eat for Little Nine, so he reached out his hand and made a map appear. He opened the map and started looking at it with Little Nine. He didn't expect Uncle Wang to give him most of the equipment. Not only did he give him the map, but he also gave him an important storage ring and a map after knowing that he was going to the desert. These things were really helpful for Jang. He began walking across the bridge. According to Uncle Wang, the wilderness was influenced by the power of Heavenly Way, and all electronic devices would be disrupted. It was almost like an apocalyptic scenario where monsters constantly migrated to their nests. These maps had an extremely short usage time. Without the latest intelligence, it was difficult to find groups of monsters, let alone the bosses. Firebird and Thunder Rhinoceros were the most common ones and were easy to spot when they moved. It was said that this place marked with a question mark should be avoided as it was a very dangerous nest with higher risk. According to Uncle Wang, this goblin dungeon was the most suitable for him since it had a low level, enough monsters, and fewer people. While Jang was looking at the map, he clenched his fist and with a smile decided to go, since with a map in hand, he would be able to find it quickly. While he was lost in his thoughts, someone caught his attention and ordered him to stop. Upon hearing this, Jang became alert and turned his head back to see who it was. A man wearing a cloak placed his hand on Jang's shoulder, then he stared at Jang aggressively. He had been calling for him all this time, so he asked why he pretended not to hear him. He just wanted to ask him something. He asked Jang if he had seen a girl with golden hair around here. Jang turned his head towards him and with a murderous look replied that he hadn't and also advised him to watch his mouth. At that moment, the poisonous mist from Little Nine started emanating from his shoulder and stuck to the man's hand. He quickly moved his hand away from Jang's shoulder and became somewhat confused. While he was looking at his hand, he clenched his teeth tightly and began to wonder if this was poison. He didn't know how this could be possible since Jang didn't seem to have reached level 10 yet. However, Jang couldn't harm him as the man was a level 27 main defense warrior. Jang turned his back and as he walked away, advised him to hurry up and find a healer since his poison must be difficult to cure. He also advised him to take care of his brain. After saying this, he bid farewell to the man. Upon hearing this, the man couldn't help but get angry. He called Jang's attention and asked if he had given him permission to leave. Upon hearing this, Jang turned his head towards him and began to look at him with a murderous gaze. The man approached Jang, and while his body was emitting a powerful aura, he stared at him with a killer look and asked how dare he lay a hand on the Xiao family. Upon hearing this, Jang began to wonder if he was referring to the Xiao family in the Battle of Heaven. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.